Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save a Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios on a very hot day in New Orleans, but it is the early August, right? No tropical weather. We're all happy about that. Let's keep that. Fingers crossed, right? Prayers all that we keep that away. But again, just a great day here in the city, especially with what's happening now. Saints are in camp. LSU starts camp today. Tulane started camp yesterday. So again, footballs are in the air. Literally, we're about a month away from the Pels starting their camp, if you can believe that or not. So again, a lot to talk about. The dog days of summer, at least for those in the sports business, are over, and that's good news. Joining us tonight on the program is award-winning journalist and, of course, an accomplished author, Les Cease of CrescentCitySports.com and also Saturday Down South. Les, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. And before we get started, tell the folks about where you're writing now, and of course about your book that's been out now. What, about 2 years?
Almost.
Yeah.
In October.
Right.
It'll be 2 years. Thanks. It's the book. First of all, is called Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes. It is a novel about politics, the media, and how sport kind of mimics that world, and that world mimics sports. So. Hopefully folks will check it out. They can get it online at all the major platforms, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, etc. As far as my day job, CrescentCitySports.com, and we have all kinds of stuff going on there, counting down to the Saints preseason opener next week. You mentioned LSU and Tulane starting practice, and I don't know how Ken Trahan does it, but I think he's going to preview every high school in the state before he's done. Yeah. So wherever you went to high school in Louisiana, you can probably go to our website and read a preview done personally by the head of the website.
Crazy.
So that's important. And then SaturdayDownSouth.com, a lot of LSU stuff. I just turned in something. They have something coming up in a week or so that's become really popular. It's their top 25 week. And I did the top 25 freshmen in the SEC, but they do the top 25 coaches in college football, top 25 transfers, every top 25 list you could think of. Right. They'll be posting day after day after day coming up as a countdown to the Labor Day weekend.
Give us a little peek into your freshmen. Any local players on that list?
Well, 2 LSU players made it. Will Anderson.
Will Campbell?
Will Campbell, the tackle. Yep. He's in there, and the linebacker that they signed is generally considered one of the top 10 freshmen coming into the SEC. So 2 Tigers made it. A lot of schools didn't make it. If you're an A&M, Georgia, or Alabama fan, you got a lot to read.
You pretty much got a lot of
Aggies on that list.
And look, let me tell you something. Based on what we're seeing from Brian Kelly in a short period of time, there'll be a lot more of those freshmen on that team coming up.
The 2023 list, I think, is going to have a lot more LSU players than this one does.
I definitely agree. Let's jump into Saints first. We're going to cover a lot of things today. We're going to cover the Saints. We're going to talk about LSU and Tulane, obviously, but we're also going to talk about the Deshaun Watson situation. We're going to talk about tampering with Sean Payton from the Miami Dolphins, that situation as well. And if we have some time, we'll get into the Pelicans. So we got a really, really full show today. And, of course, got a great guy to be able to break it down for us. You've been at camp throughout the training camp for the Saints. Big day within the last couple of days. Tyrann Mathieu back in the fold.
Yeah, that was important. It sort of came out of the blue when they said last week that Tyrann had been excused from the early part of camp to deal with a family matter that has remained private. But he returned yesterday, Wednesday, spoke this morning after practice, and seems to be in good spirits, is happy to be back. And I think the fact that he chose to show up for OTAs when he didn't have to was important, because he started to learn the offense and his teammates got a lot of reps out there, a lot of work in the classroom. So the week that he missed at the start of training camp, I think, is relatively insignificant because he did a lot of that work during OTAs.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay the first week of camp, but again, until you put the pads on, it's not football. Those guys are kind of ramping up, getting their bodies kind of ready. You know, again, the rookies going a week before, they're doing a lot of classroom work. So again, what he missed was not significant. Although, again, for a veteran like that, if we would have got into another week of that, maybe it would have been an issue. But coming when he did, I don't think it's no harm, no foul.
Right, I agree. It's, you know, they didn't put the pads on until Monday.
Right.
So now they've had a grand total of 4 practices since they put the pads on. The first few practices were really just reminding guys of how they practice so that they have the pace and the tempo and they do things the way the coaches want them done. And then they start simulating football to some degree this second week, and so that's where they're at. But it's 5.5 weeks till the season opener.
Right.
So you know, everybody's eager to start drawing conclusions and to read stuff into what's going on. But it's still very early in the process, and you got to be patient because it's a long way to the first game.
I agree. One good thing is Michael Thomas, especially yesterday, 7-on-7s for the first time. You've had your eye on him. How's he looking? Is he sharp in and out of his cuts? Is he rounding them off? Again, from what I understand, lost some weight. Looks like, he's in really good shape. Why don't you, for the audience, give us your view? Yeah,
he looks good. I don't think there's any question. He's in outstanding shape, always has been. Looks like he's in especially good shape now. Looks good on the field. You know, they're being cautious with him. Again, they want him to be 100% when they play Atlanta on September 11th. And so right now, he's somewhat limited, but in the work that he's doing, I don't see any ill effects from the ankle surgeries that he's had. And so there's still more work for him to do before he's ready to compete in an NFL regular season game. But I think it's realistic to assume he will be 100% when they start the season.
How's Jameis looked?
Inconsistent. Which I don't think is too surprising. Now, the day they got chased inside by the weather, I think that was Tuesday. Yeah. I think that was probably Jameis's best day. He hit the long pass to Deontay Hardy at the end of the workout. He also was sharper. There have been instances. It was the days all run together now. I think it was Friday of last week. Even Dennis Allen said that, you know, it was like the third day out in the heat. They kind of hit a wall, and there was a lot of sloppiness. There were drop passes, and Jameis himself was off a little bit. He had some balls that just, and some of them were very short passes, and they just weren't smooth. But, you know, he's, 9 months removed from reconstructive knee surgery. He's getting acclimated to some new players. He's, it's a process he has to go through. And there are going to be some inconsistent moments for him, and I think we've seen that so far, but I think we're also going to see him get better as the days go by, and we've already seen an indication of that, because Tuesday was definitely a better day for him.
For him, and again, we've been so spoiled by Drew Brees because his mechanics were perfect. But if you watch him when he is inaccurate, it's his footwork, it's the platform. He's not stepping into his throw. He's off balance. Again, there are some players that can do that and do that. Mahomes is one, right? He can throw from anywhere, in terms of his platform. For Jameis, he almost has to be, the mechanics have to be perfect for him. And again, he seems to be more accurate. When he's off, when he's not, in that perfect mechanics, that's where we start to see those balls flutter. That's where we start to see some inaccuracies. And I'm hoping that's something that, again, they're really going to work on with him. Because to me, that's been the issue with him going all the way back to Tampa Bay. When he has not been mechanically sound is when he's run into problems.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a work in progress and probably will be for the foreseeable future. You see him doing a lot of the footwork that Drew did.
Yes.
I think he learned it from Drew, where even when he doesn't have a football in his hands, when he's on the side, he's doing almost like a boxer, limbering up. Yeah, muscle memory, moving his feet around, working on the drop back, just technique. And so he's very aware of it. He's putting the time in, and so I don't think there's any doubt it's going to get better. But again, it's a surgically repaired knee. That's his plant foot.
Yes.
And he's wearing a brace that he's not used to wearing. I think he's already changed braces once during OTAs to try and get more comfortable. So it's an adjustment period for him, and that is something that's going to be a work in progress, like I said, and it may be a concern. I don't know that he's going to be perfect with his footwork and his mechanics, and that's where turnovers tend to happen sometimes. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But at this point, I don't see any red flags in that regard, and it's certainly something that's an emphasis for him and the coaching staff.
Your thoughts overall on the offense? So again, the addition of Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave in the wide receiver room. You're talking about now, looks like Adam Troutman is having a pretty good camp right now. Taysom Hill is injured once again, so again, he's playing that tight end position, but there are guys there, again, that look like they're going to try to step up into those positions. So just the skill positions, what your thoughts are first?
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't know that there is another position group in the NFL that has the potential to improve as much as the Saints wide receivers. When you look at Mike Thomas was not there, and you drafted Chris Olave and you signed Jarvis Landry. Those are your top three wide receivers that were not on the team last year. So Marquez Callaway, who was your #1 receiver last year, wasn't great but did improve significantly from earlier in his rookie season, really. He's now fighting to be the 4th receiver. Okay, I don't know there's another position group in the NFL that has that dynamic. So they should be much improved. They had the least productive passing game in the NFL last year, I think. And they don't have to be top 5. I think they could probably be middle of the pack and win the division. So that's important. I think the passing game is going to be much, much better, and that will open up the running game even more. And I think the complement of deep threats with Deontay Hardy and Chris Olave, with the underneath threats of Mike Thomas and Jarvis Landry, I think is just gives Pete Carmichael so much to work with. So I think the way those pieces fit together is exceptional. So that's where I start with the offense, because I think that would be the biggest change from last year. Now, the other two issues, tight end is a bit of a question mark. We don't think Taysom Hill is going to be a long-term thing. Troutman really struggled with injuries over the last year or so. If he can stay healthy, I think you can see him
He's got the talent. Yeah,
he's got the talent. Last year, a lot of things went bad for him early in the season, and I think a lot of that was injury related. If he's healthy, I think improvement there is to be expected. Okay, left tackle obviously is something we have to watch. They have two options there. In James Hurst and Trevor Penning, the #1. We'll see if Penning's ready, and I'm sure we'll talk about him more.
Yes, we will.
And then, of course, the Kamara situation, which still hovers over this team, although it kind of got elevated a little bit this week. It's not right on top of their heads like it was when he had an August 1st court date. That's now an October court date, if then. So those are things that are still to be determined, but I think the offense begins and ends with what should be a dramatically improved passing game.
How about the defensive side of the ball, where they look really, honestly, they look stacked on all three levels. Maybe they could use some depth at the linebacker position, but again, if Ellis and Bond step up, or again Wilson, the veteran, maybe that solves that issue with Quan Alexander now with the New York Jets. But all three levels look like there's some quality depth, and the starters are quality as well.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best Saints defense outside of the Dome Patrol. And it has a chance, the linebackers obviously aren't anything like the Dome Patrol. Defense as a whole, I think, has a chance to be comparable to some of those best units in the early 90s and late 80s. They're stacked across the board. You're right, there's less depth at linebacker than there is on the front end and the back end. But they play two linebackers most of the time.
Yes, true.
The one guy who's always going to be out there is Demario Davis, who's one of the best in the NFL. So what you're really looking at is some young guys in whom they've invested high draft choices, trying to take over the second linebacking spot. So that's not a huge concern. They just need somebody functional in there, and it may be multiple guys. Pete Werner had a good rookie year last year, and he's been slowed by an injury so far, but nothing long term. And then you mentioned Zach Bond. I think it's time for the light to go on for him. Caden Ellis has had some injuries. He might be a factor. Andrew Dowell's another player who possibly could contribute there. I think he's certainly a special teams guy, very much like Craig Robertson, who was his mentor.
Yes.
So the linebacker depth is the one area where you would say, yeah, if they could, they would try and upgrade that. The depth on the defensive line is outstanding. The depth in the secondary is outstanding. So I think this is going to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I've written this a couple of times. I think the personality of this team has changed in the last couple of years from being offense first to being defense first. And that's not just because the head coach is a defensive coach and his predecessor was an offensive coach. That's just where their strength is. And it's a strength that has gotten better and better, and I think could really be outstanding this year.
They're going to release some players on defense that are going to start for other teams in the NFL. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's no doubt about that. Especially on the back end, can't keep everybody. Inside on the defensive line as well, can't keep everybody. You hope that maybe you can slip some of these guys in the practice squad, now with the expanded practice squad. But you know, again, anybody could come and pluck those guys at any time. So again, there's some real quality depth there as well. I do want to get into Penning, okay, because I have a very strong opinion on this situation. Look, nobody wants practice disrupted. But I feel like what this line has been missing is somebody's got a mean streak in them. We saw Kyle Turley. We want to go way back. We saw Conrad Dobler, right? So offensive line needs, again, guys that have a little bit of a mean streak, a little nastiness to them. I would hope that Dennis Allen or again, the coach staff is not trying to take this away from this kid, because that's what really that's kind of his motor. No, you can't disrupt practice, but again, I think that his nastiness will pay dividends. Now, you can't be a guy that's going to get penalties and hurt your team, right? After the whistle, but
which he did in college,
right? Which he did constantly in college, right? That's got to be kept under control. But I like the physicality, I like the nastiness, and I think with this group that's. You know, I don't want to downplay them and say a bunch of nice guys, but, you know, even I think Cesar Ruiz said it this week, you know, that they like that it motivates them to see him, again, with his physicality and his nastiness. You've been there, you've seen it with your eyes. What do you think?
Well, at this point, I don't think it's a concern. It could become a concern very easily. Dennis Allen was really angry yesterday. He pulled the team aside at the end of practice and made it clear we don't have time for this nonsense, okay? We're out here to work.
That was a brawl, though, almost, right?
Yeah. It was more than your typical training camp, just pushing each other.
Right.
There was a lot of it. A lot of guys came over at the end, which could have really been a problem if it had escalated even more than it did. So he was very angry about that. I have no doubt that he made the point to those two individuals. Malcolm Roach was on the receiving end of that and retaliated. that he made his point to both those guys, we're not going to tolerate this in practice. We got work to do. And Allen said after the practice this morning that he thought the team responded well and that they were more professional today. So it's really very simple. Trevor Penning's personality, that edge that he has, can be a big asset for him. It can also be a big liability for him. And it's up to him to decide which one it's going to be. And you know, because he had so many penalties in college, because he's had 3 incidents, the first 2 relatively minor and then the one yesterday, you wonder if there's a discipline problem with him. And if there's a discipline problem, does that translate to his technique and how he plays, okay? Just because he loses his temper in practice doesn't cost you a game. But if that same lack of discipline leads him to make mistakes, to commit penalties in games, then that character trait becomes a problem in another area that's more significant. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's what they're trying to nip in the bud right now. What I think is good is Dennis Allen has recognized this immediately and addressed it. But Doug Marrone is not going to put up with this, the offensive line coach. And you have Zach Strief, who played tackle in the NFL, and you have Jari Evans, who is a Hall of Fame caliber offensive lineman who is an intern on this coaching staff. So there are a lot of people, and Doug Marrone played offensive line in the NFL. So there are a lot of people around Trevor Penning who can guide him through this so that he learns how to use that as an asset and not allow it to become a liability. So I think the chances are good that it will be a positive thing, but there's the danger that it becomes a negative.
You've seen it up close and personal. Is it him losing his temper, or is him baiting the defense?
Oh, I think it's more the latter. And that's where I think you definitely hope he's not Kyle Turley.
Right.
Okay, Conrad Dobler was maybe a little more accepted. He was probably, well, he probably didn't hurt his team as much as Kyle did.
It was a different era, too.
It was also a different era. So you hope he's not Kyle Turley. And Kyle, I think it was a lot of his temper got the better of him. In Trevor's case, I think it's the competitive edge. I said this on a radio show this morning. Maybe the guy who needs to talk to Trevor Penning is C.J. Gardner-Johnson, because he's the same guy. He likes to bait the opponent. He likes to get under their skin, and he hurt his team early in his career. Last year, he didn't hurt his team once. He learned how to marshal that emotion, that thing that helps him, and didn't let it get the better of him. And I think Trevor Penning's a very similar player. Part of his game is to get under the skin of the guy he's going against, and that can be helpful as long as it doesn't get out of control. And I think CJ is the perfect guy to explain how he's managed to do that.
Paul, you're so good at this, because my segue is right to C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Great minds think alike.
Yes, it does. Now, I have never heard this before, okay? I mean, again, where a player comes to camp, is not happy with the contract, but will, again, sit out of drills in almost a protest of saying, all right, I'm not going to get my body banged up because I want another deal. He is in the last year of his deal. He is deserving of an extension. The question for the Saints are, how do you pay him? Do you pay him as a nickel corner? Do you pay him as an outside corner? You know, I mean, you know, it's almost like the Jimmy Graham situation all over again, right?
Yeah.
You know, that they're going to have to deal with. So this is a tough contract. It's not an easy one, you know, to do. But I was shocked when I heard that yesterday, that, again, he's voluntarily sitting out drills, and part of it is, look, I'm working on a contract. The good thing is he's there. The questionable thing is, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of anything quite like that before, and that's not a wise thing for him to do, because you're in a contract year, okay? What you're trying to do is prove to your employer your value to him, so you maximize your next contract. Well, if you're in the training camp, as you're getting ready for the season, you're saying, my personal interests take priority over the team's interests. I'm looking out for myself and my contract more than I'm looking out for my teammates And on the defensive side of the ball, you're sending a really bad message to the organization about whether you truly deserve the contract you want. Your football play suggests you deserve a big contract, but your attitude right now casts some doubt on that. And I would hope that his agent could get that message across to him, and he would come to understand that that's not the right way to approach it. The best way to get the contract that you want is to go out and perform as though you deserve it.
Right.
Ask Mike Thomas. And he more than anyone, Mike was upset that he outperformed his contract and wasn't being compensated because he was tied to his rookie contract, which is just business in the NFL. Everybody goes through that. But Mike went out and proved he was worth the big deal, got the biggest wide receiver contract in the NFL, and then went out and broke a record. Okay, so he showed, yeah, I'm sulking about the contract, but when I'm on the field and when I'm on the practice field, I'm doing everything you want me to do. CJ needs to do the same thing.
I'm a little surprised by it. We'll see again if this continues, but it was really, I mean, when it was reported, it was really surprising. You mentioned Jari Evans, you mentioned Zach Strief, you mentioned Doug Marrone. First of all, seeing Jari Evans in camp really again was, I think it's genius on the part of the club. You got a guy he's going to get into the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer. He is going to command the attention of anybody playing the offensive line position. And to have the years of experience with Strief and Jari Evans with a group that needs some help right now. Cesar Reeves obviously has struggled over the last couple of years. They're blaming on, again, COVID, lack of OTAs, and that's kind of, hurt his progress. You got a situation on the other side where Andres Pete, when he's healthy, I think he's a pretty good player. But again, he could use some help. You got a rookie in Penning. I think Hurst is a vet. And McCoy is still a fairly young player. And then, of course, Ramczyk is one of the best in position, but still young. The influence of those guys, including Doug Marrone, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in all of football, we've got to see a dramatic difference in this offensive line this year just by having those guys with the institutional knowledge they bring to the table.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked at length, a few of us did, with Doug Marrone after practice the other day. He was available, and he educates you so much when he speaks that everybody wants to sit there and talk to him for as long as they can. And he was talking about how it's not, James Hurst has the greatest attitude anybody could have about how I'm doing everything I possibly can to win the left tackle job, but the time that I'm not actually taking a rep or doing something related to that, I'm doing everything in my power to make Trevor Penning the best player he can be, because even if he takes my job, we're going to be a better team because of his development. He has the perfect attitude for the position he's in. But Marrone went beyond that, and he said, Andres Pete and Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz is younger, but nonetheless, same attitude. And of course, Ryan Ramczyk, they all have that same attitude. They're all so close that Trevor Penning, he has like 8 coaches around him with the rest of the offensive line and Marrone and Strief and Evans. He's just got so many people around him who are interested in his best interests and understand playing offensive line in the NFL so well that if he doesn't become a very good player, shame on him, because he's got the physical ability and he's got everything he could need in surrounding him as he begins his NFL career. And Marrone brought this up. Jari Evans came from Bloomsburg State. Jermon Bushrod came from Towson State, I believe. Towson. And this guy's coming from Northern Iowa. So, he's seen guys come in from smaller college programs, and they showed right away, like, it doesn't matter where he came from, he can play. And Penning's the same way.
Yeah, no doubt. Last question on training camp, then we're going to move on. We're going to talk a little bit about the tampering situation, Deshaun Watson, and, of course, LSU and Tulane. The new sheriff in town, okay? I mean, new voice. They maybe have continuity, but this team, as most teams do, take on the personality of their head coach. This was a team that took on the personality of Sean Payton in a lot of cases. What is the personality of Dennis Allen, and how's that going to translate to this team? And if you would, compare and contrast to the previous regime.
Well, that's a good question. I think the most obvious thing is Dennis is not as fiery as Sean Payton is by nature.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It could be either. I think it could be I don't know that it's either. I think it's just different.
Okay.
And Sean showed his emotions more easily than Dennis does.
True.
But I think Dennis is capable of showing it when he needs to.
The press conferences are kind of gentler.
The press conferences are definitely different,
Yes.
and that's a good thing.
Yes.
Although Sean wasn't bad at all. But in Dennis's case, I think he probably has a shorter fuse, okay? But he can get to that point when it's necessary. And we saw a little bit of that yesterday with him talking about the fight during practice. He didn't like that at all. But I think he is, I asked Demario Davis essentially the same question. What have you seen from him as a defensive coordinator that will serve him well as a head coach? And the first thing he said was, he is just so smart. He is so good at figuring out what the other team wants to do and how he can beat it. And he's done that with the defense all along, and now he's doing it with the whole team. And so I think, and Sean Payton, obviously, a very, very smart football guy as well. So I don't think that's changing at all. It's just that one of them comes from a defensive perspective, the other was from an offensive perspective. But I think the intelligence, the attention to detail, and the respect he already has from this team from what he has done as defensive coordinator, I think are all important things. But the other thing that I think gets overlooked a little bit, it did with Sean, and so far I think it has with Dennis, is that this is a really, really good coaching staff. There have been a few hiccups along the way where Sean had assistants who didn't work out as well as he had hoped. But really, for during this 5-year run, when they've had a winning record every year, 4 division titles, it's been an outstanding staff. We talked about Doug Marrone. He was an outstanding addition to the staff, what was already a staff. When you have he's still going to be calling the defense on Sundays, but he's got Ryan Nielsen and Chris Richard preparing the defense, and Michael Hodges. Linebackers love Michael Hodges. So the defensive staff especially, but Pete Carmichael and the offensive staff, the special teams are among the best in the league every year because they have such a good coaching staff there. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind, that is Allen prepared for this job? Yes, he is, but he's also benefiting from having a tremendous group around him.
There you go. Les East, award-winning journalist and author, CrestCitySports.com, Saturday Down South is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll hear from our underwriters when we come back. We're going to shift gears. We're going to talk a little bit about the tampering situation with the Miami Dolphins and New Orleans Saints, Bucks, and Patriots. Also, we'll get into Deshaun Watson. We'll unpack that. And then, of course, we'll jump into a preview of LSU and Tulane, and both have started fall camp. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Les East is our guest today. All right, we'll jump into the tampering situation between the Miami Dolphins, the New Orleans Saints, the Bucks, and also the Patriots. For those that don't know, there was a 6-month investigation by the NFL into tampering. Stephen Ross, the owner of the of the Miami Dolphins reaching out to Don Yee, who is the agent for both Tom Brady and also Sean Payton, with a proposal of Tom Brady coming over to the Dolphins for as their quarterback and also part ownership in the team. Payton coming over as, again, the head coach, 4 years, $100 million, about $25 million a year, total control. And of course, this was when both were under contract. There was a salvo again when Brady was with the Patriots in 2019-2020. That continued through again when Brady ended up as a free agent going to the Bucs. Remember the storyline. Breeze was thinking about retiring. Brady was dangling out there, and there was a lot of talk that Brady was going to end up in New Orleans if Breeze moved on. Breeze ended up staying. Brady ends up going to the Bucs. Bucs end up getting a Super Bowl, and the rest is history there. But the timeline, especially when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, is the curious part of this, because what ended up happening was right around the time in January was 2022 when Payton was considering again moving on. Is when again all this came about behind the scenes. Now, since then, the NFL has taken away the 2023 first-round pick away from the Dolphins, and also a third-round pick in 2024. Stephen Ross was fined $1.5 million. He's been banished from the NFL, the Dolphins facility, operations. He's been removed from all league committees. His partner, Bruce Beal, was fined $500,000, cannot attend league meetings, and he's for the rest of 2022. So clearly tampering, no doubt about it, clearly tampering. I have said on the radio show over the last couple days that the Saints need to be compensated. You cannot convince me that when this conversation happened between Don Yee, who was the and I'm going to stay with the Saints here rather than Tom Brady, pardon me. You're not convinced me that Don Yee did not go to Sean Payton and say, Sean, I spoke with Stephen Ross. He's the owner of the Miami Dolphins. He wants you to come and be their head coach. Oh, by the way, Tom Brady, he's working with Tom Brady to be the quarterback. He's going to give him a piece of the team. He's going to give you 4 years, $100 million. You got total control. Now, even if Payton was thinking about moving on, there's a seed there at that point. If you remember, Mrs. Benson told Payton when he was talking about walking away, go take some time, go to Cabo or wherever they went, spend some time, come back. We still have not had Mickey Loomis, who again was linked to him arm in arm during their whole period here, 16 years in New Orleans, tell us, the media, how he felt about the departure of Sean Payton and what Sean Payton meant. Still to this day, he has not said anything. He had two chances. He had the day of the departure and also at Senior Bowl. Still has not commented on that publicly. Look into it as you will. But yet, the Saints are getting no compensation here for the tampering. Whether that pushed Payton out the door or not, who knows? But the timing of that doesn't look good. I did the research and I showed this to you earlier. There are instances in San Francisco in 2008 when the 49ers were found guilty of tampering with Chicago linebacker Lance Briggs. They were stripped of their fifth-round pick. They had to swap third-round choices. 3 years later, the Chiefs accused Detroit of tampering. Their ex-coach Gunther Cunningham, he was the Lions defensive coordinator at the time. He said he would be interested in signing Kansas City players that were released. The NFL jumped in, took their sixth-round pick away, made the Chiefs and the Lions swap fifth-round picks. In 2016, the Jets, their owner, Woody Johnson, said that, again, he'd love to have Darrelle Revis back. They fined him $100,000. In 2017, the Chiefs forfeited a third and a sixth-round pick and were fined $250,000. Andy Reid was fined $75,000. Dorsey, the GM, $25,000 on again their contact with Macklin, the wide receiver. There is a precedent here of, again, the NFL either swapping picks with again the injured party, or again, you have to go back to, it's not this collective bargaining agreement now, to Dave Parks and the Saints. 1968-69, Saints signed Dave Parks as a free agent, and then commissioner, I believe it was Rozelle, gave the San Francisco 49ers 2 number 1 picks. There's no doubt there's tampering. The problem that I have is, number one, you're not banning Peyton and Brady, who will be a free agent next year, from going to the Dolphins next year, even with the tampering. And then at the same time, yes, you're taking picks away from them, but the Saints get nothing out of it. Give us your thoughts.
Okay, I tweeted this right after the story broke, and they said that they were forfeiting these draft choices. Right. And I said that they, instead of forfeiting them, they should distribute them to the Patriots, the Buccaneers, 100%. And the Saints. You want to put teeth into that penalty. You don't just say you're losing your draft choice. We're taking it from you and we're giving it to a competitor. In the Patriots case, that's a divisional opponent. In the Saints and the Buccaneers case, those are two programs that the Dolphins are desperately trying to catch up to.
Yes.
So that would have impacted them more, I think. That's something they should have done. I think you're right about the ban. There should be a ban on either Peyton or Brady going to the Dolphins, because otherwise they are they are reaping the dividends of the illegality that they committed that you just punished them for. So that's like saying, well, that's like if somebody robs a bank and you say, okay, you got to go to jail for a brief period of time, but when you come out, you get to keep the bank's money.
Keep the money, right?
No, you got to give the money back. So, so I think that definitely should be put in place. But I guess the ironic part of this is that, you know, another element of this story, all this comes from Brian Flores. Accusations about him, and you know, supposedly there was a joke going around that, and Flores said it was something much more sinister. But they were saying, you're winning too many games, you're ruining our draft position because you're winning too many games. Well, one way to solve that problem is to forfeit all of your draft choices by tampering. So they don't have to worry about messing up their draft position anymore.
And of course, you're not buying this set and jest thing to Flores. If you're offering him $100,000 to lose games, where's the thing? Oh, I was just kidding.
Yeah, and I think it was Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports tweeted this first. But so what they determined is everything that Brian Flores accused them of was true, except the one thing that would damage the NFL, and that is incentivizing losing. So everything he did, so Brian Flores came through and said, this is the truth, and everything was true, and then at the last minute, he decided to throw in something that wasn't true, and it just happened to be the one thing most damaging to the league. That's a little hard to swallow.
And like we were talking about before, the partnership between the NFL and now gambling casinos around the country, again, when you're dealing with bettors and everything else, just not a good look for the Shield. And of course, they will protect the Shield at all costs. But nobody's buying that. Nobody's buying Stephen Ross said it in jest. Okay, that is a corrupt organization, and they need to be punished. Okay, you know, they call the Saints a corrupt organization with the situation with Vicodin-gate and Bounty-gate, and they get the book thrown at them. But yet again, the book's not being thrown. You say they're taking away a first and a third? Yeah, I get it. They have another first-round pick from San Francisco, so they will have a first-round pick in this draft. No, again, with this tampering, they called the tampering egregious. Okay, they've never seen tampering to this level before. But yet again, at the end of the day, the Saints, especially here, who are the injured party, they had a Super Bowl winning coach. That guy's not here anymore. You can connect the dots all you want. Again, there is an issue there. Let's shift gears to the Deshaun Watson situation. We found out today that Roger Goodell is not going to be not going to take on the mediator role. They're going to take that. They're going to give that outside of the NFL. After again, the NFL has appealed Judge Robinson's ruling on a 6-game suspension for Deshaun Watson. Now, through this, if I go through it really quickly, Judge Robinson said that the burden of proof was correct. She used the standard of, again, civil law to be able to go forward with this. There were 3 violations of the collective bargaining policy, the players' policy, conduct policy: sexual assault, genuine danger to safety of and well-being of another, undermining and putting at risk to the integrity of the NFL. Robinson found that again, Watson violated all 3 of those provisions. Well, by the way, Alvin Kamara has violated 2 of those provisions. again, the genuine danger to safety and well-being, and again, undermining and putting at risk the integrity of the NFL. Those are two things he's going to have to deal with going forward. But I digress. She also said that, again, that his behavior, using Instagram, asking for privacy, asking work on his glutes and groin, the use of, again, using his status as a NFL quarterback, using the small towel instead of the normal draping. She said that she found those allegations to be credible, and his denials that, again, were not credible. She also went on to, again, said that that, again, she agreed that there was inappropriate sexual contact with these women. It was that there was sexual assault as part of this deal. She violated those clauses going forward. But again, even more, why she only got 6 games, she blamed this on the NFL. She said that the NFL, and I'm paraphrasing here, that she could not go above the punishments that the precedent had been set. That the NFL, for the most part, had been pretty soft on abuse of women, on sexual assault, and that the most that, again, they had given players in the past were 6 games, and because they had not gone out and given notice that they were going to give a stronger punishment, she could not go beyond what was already the precedent. The last part of it is, she said her punishment, she considered his lack of remorse, tardy for the first suit. He was a first-time offender, and his record. But she said that, again, this is the most egregious sexual misconduct that she has seen in the NFL. She also said she couldn't take into account the 17 games from last year because he was not on the exempt list from the commissioner. So again, that's out the window. You can't say that he already served 17 games. We know now the NFL has now appealed that. The Players Association has 2 days now. They have 1 more day to be able to give their take on this situation. The NFL wants an indefinite suspension, a fine, and also they want him to go to psychological
counseling, for lack of a better term.
All right, I laid it out for you. Give me your thoughts.
There's a lot to unpack there. She's right, the arbitrator, the judge, whatever the proper title is. She's correct in that the NFL has a long track record of being lenient on sexual assault against women. That's undeniable. Okay, but when you use the term precedent and first-term offender, well, yeah, he's a first-term offender who did 30 offenses.
Right.
So I'm not sure that qualifies as a first-time offender because he did this as a serial.
Premeditated, calculated.
Right, over an extended period of time with a numerous people, numerous victims, okay? So first-time offender doesn't really hold water. Precedent. Yeah, the precedent is that the NFL has been too lenient on sexual assault. I'm not sure that justifies being too lenient in the future, and I'm not sure that that even qualifies as precedent because no one has been accused of doing what he did to the extent that he did it, and I don't know that anybody disputes the facts. You know, it's not like saying, oh, they made it up. He didn't do it. It's all kind of like, well, yeah, he went to get a massage and then it turned into something different. And the question is, he thinks that's perfectly appropriate. I think he said that. So I don't really understand that. If this were a criminal case and you had this many charges and a court of law, a jury or a judge handed out the criminal equivalent of a 6-game suspension, there would be people on the streets everywhere in America because this is such a miscarriage of justice. It's absurd. And in this whole process, for the NFL to say, Roger Goodell's not going to hear the appeal. No, he's going to appoint the person who rules on his appeal.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm appealing it, and I'm handpicking the person who's going to rule on my appeal. So he's getting more than 6 games. I don't know what it'll wind up being. I'm confident it will still wind up being inadequate, whatever it is. But the process insults our intelligence, and the explanation for the leniency insults our intelligence, and it's a mess, but it's typical of the way the NFL does business.
I got to take it the next step, and we got to get to LSU and Tulane. what were the Saints thinking? I mean, this is the first big move post Peyton, okay? And no, this is really going to, this is the face of your franchise. They had to know everything, okay? They've got a security. NFL's got security. They had to know what they were getting into, and ultimately to just feel like what we're seeing right now, maybe it'll only be 6 games, but the fallout, okay, and everything that's gone down. Putting Mrs. Benson in a position where she visits him not once but twice, gets on a plane, goes twice to visit him, okay? Someone that's done so much for females in sports, allowing them to advance in sports. It's mind-blowing. And then to see, again, the theme on this offseason has been continuity, right? We're going to bring everybody. Everybody's got to stay together. We don't want to break anything up. But bringing that situation into the locker room, look, that's the kind of stuff that will fracture any locker room. Much less, again, the fallout we're seeing right now, that Cleveland is having to deal with. At the end of the day, I don't care how good he may be, he's not good enough to be able to overcome all that.
No, the fact that the Saints went that far down the road trying to get him is inexplicable for all the reasons you just said. I don't understand it. By far, the best thing, forget about whether Dennis Allen's a good hire, the free agents were good, the draft was good, any of that, Mike Thomas is back, pick it all. By far, by immeasurable standards, the best thing to happen to the Saints in the offseason was Deshaun Watson picking Cleveland and taking this mess away from the Saints and dumping it on the Cleveland Browns.
No doubt, because I don't know if they could talk about continuity and locker room and everything else. That, again, is a cancer. You're alienated your female fans. I mean, there's so many levels on this thing on why they couldn't think that out. I cannot understand how they were blinded by this.
I don't get it. I don't understand it. And they should just, thank their lucky stars that it worked out the way they did, because they got bailed out big time.
Big time. Let's talk LSU first. How good do you think this team can be under Brian Kelly in his first year?
I have no idea. They, I think they have a chance to be better. Okay, I think
is that 8-4 better, 9-3 better?
Oh, I'm thinking 8-4 probably.
I don't think 8-4 is a bad record for him the first year out.
No, I don't think it is either. This roster is not what it's going to be in a couple of years. Agreed. He doesn't have 85 scholarship players. He tried to get there, he couldn't. Now, he salvaged, I believe, the number 12 ranked recruiting class in the country. He did a good job with the transfer portal.
Excellent job.
Picked good players at positions of need. Did a good job. They have pretty good talent coming back in the starting lineup. They just don't have enough depth.
But the coaching, I think, will be better.
The coaching, I think, will be good. I think there's no question he's a very good coach.
No,
I mean, he got 31 years of evidence. He's a very good coach. He's got a good staff. So they will be much more stable than they've been the last 2 years. And I think they will compete at a level equal to what their talent suggests they should be, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But the ceiling is fairly low because they just don't have enough good players. They have one preseason All-SEC offensive player on 3 teams. Kayshawn Boutte, who's the best player on the team, probably. After that, there's no one on their offense who's even 3rd team preseason SEC. I think they have 1 first, 2nd, and 3rd on defense. So they just don't have the players you expect them to have. They don't have the depth you expect them to have. But I think they will compete. I think they will compete well. They will be improved. I think the Florida State game will tell us a lot.
This is one of those years they got to be lucky with injuries. You cannot go deep into that depth chart.
And they've been unlucky the last 2 years.
They have. So maybe hope that turns around.
Yeah. And then the quarterback. They're going to have a good quarterback.
No doubt.
We don't know who it is, though.
I think it'll be a disciplined team as well. I think we saw a lot of lack of discipline over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think absolutely they will be a more disciplined team. And I think the headlines will be limited to football, which will be refreshing.
Tulane, coming off a 2-10 season. This is a rebound season for him. I think Willie Fritz has done a nice job in the offseason, retooling his coaching staff, adding some, again, in the transfer portal. I think they will be better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. This is a big season for Tulane because it will tell us whether last season was an aberration or the beginning of a downward trend. I think it was probably an aberration. I mean, you look at the displacement from the Hurricane, you got to play Oklahoma.
The schedule's
and they played a great game against Oklahoma. They had to play Ole Miss, then they blow the game against UAB, and the confidence was shot. The quarterback had to play hurt. The wheels came off. So I don't think that that's a beginning of a trend. That was an anomaly. But having said that, you still have to go out and prove it was an anomaly.
I agree.
I think they have. I think he tweaked his staff in a good way. I think they have good talent. I think if Michael Pratt's healthy, that's huge for them. He's a very good quarterback. Schedule's not as taxing. Let's hope there's no displacement for them or us.
Amen.
And so yeah, I think they could be back to where we thought they would be last year and have been for the 3 years before that, which is around 500, chance for maybe a bowl game if everything falls their way.
You know what I find interesting, Les? LSU, Saints, Tulane all made changes in strength and conditioning coaches. Every one of them. All three of them. All three of them been again often injured. All three made changes. Look, talk about Tommy Moffitt was entrenched. Okay? Entrenched at LSU, and they moved on. But I found it interesting. Again, all three are worried about soft tissue issues. All three seem to again say that again the staff they brought in are focusing on that. We'll see how that plays out throughout the season.
We will, and Tommy Moffitt was beloved at LSU,
absolutely.
and with good reason. But I think Brian Kelly, more than anything against Tommy Moffitt, is he took a more modern approach, a more cutting-edge approach that I think he's hopeful will make a difference. And I think the thing you hear the Saints players talk about with their new coach is everything is data-driven. So I think what you have is, in those two cases, I'm not as familiar with Tulane. I think with LSU and the Saints, they transitioned into a more modern approach to how they handle strength and conditioning. We'll see if it pays off.
Hopefully it does. I mean, again, that look for all three of those programs. That's the key this year. Again, you know, especially with Tulane, LSU with again not having enough scholarship players, and of course, the Saints have been riddled with injuries over the last couple of years. They need a little luck as well. We were lucky to have you today. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, again, great job. And with about 30 seconds left, tell us about the book and how folks can follow you on social media and, of course, where they catch your writing.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Saturday Down South, LSU coverage, Saints, and much more at CrescentCitySports.com. And folks can follow me on Twitter at Les_East.
Thank you, Les. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. You know, I used to go through all the rebroadcasts. I can't do that anymore. Just as a QR code on your TV, put the phone up there, click it, it'll take you right to the website. That'll be my website, ericasher.com, and you'll be able to find the times on the rebroadcast. Plus, it'll take you right to the WLAE-TV YouTube page as well, where you can watch the program at your leisure. Also, again, don't forget, you catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM Nash Icon. That is 4 to 6 weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, the TuneIn Radio app, the iHeartRadio app, our digital platforms. Anchor is our home base for our podcast. You catch the podcast, again, we have that up about 20 minutes after each program. Again, thanks to Les East for joining us on today's program. Also, special thanks to the underwriters who make this show possible. We appreciate those underwriters. Please support those underwriters as well. Also, to the WLE production staff who do an incredible job of, again, putting this program on. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Raffia, Alex Chacon, and, of course, William Hill, our director. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm Eric Asher for Les East. Have a great week.